Hello and welcome. We have with us Mr. G.K. Pillai, former Home Secretary and former Commerce Secretary, who was heading MCX-SX for a while till recently, but resigned last week after the Central Bureau of Investigation instituted an inquiry and filed a PE, a preliminary inquiry against former SEBI chief CB Bhave and KM Abraham, former whole-time member of SEBI. Welcome to the show, sir. I wanted to sort of start off by asking you, you have said in an interview that the CBI inquiry, the preliminary inquiry, was actually a part of the reason why you resigned from MCX-SX. Was that a major reason, or were there other reasons also, sir?
Yeah, there were other reasons also, partly because of my commitments on many other projects, including other companies. I didn't want the impact of this to affect my reputation in other companies, including a venture capital fund, in which again sentiments are extremely important.
Were you sort of trying to send a message by your resignation, and what message were you trying to send? If you could please elucidate. Certainly, because you have said that you do not agree with the fact that the CBI has lodged an inquiry against Bhave and Abraham.
Yeah, I think partly because I think the manner in which the CBI filed the preliminary inquiry, it's actually on the setting up of the issue of license to MCX-SX.
That's right, sir.
I think this is a matter which lies purely within the ambit and scope of a regulator. He's laid down the conditions, whatever it is that under which an exchange will function, the regulations, and once the regulator takes that decision, as I said earlier, that unless you can show there is some malafide or corruption involved, I don't think you can really, it's not for any investigative agency to go behind that decision.
Right.
If people are upset with that decision, there are other opportunities available in the courts and so on.
But if I may say, before I come to that point, do you think the CBI's motive is political in nature? Do you think they have a specific motive? Why are they targeting some people, or is this, as the CBI director has gone on record to say, just an inquiry, they're not arresting anybody right now, they're not raiding anybody right now, and they may close it later? You think it's as innocuous as that, or do you think there's something behind it?
It's very difficult for me to say whether anything is behind it.
Right.
But I still think that if the CBI does not have what I mentioned, evidence of either malafide or corruption, then they should be extremely careful about even instituting an inquiry, because you are dealing with financial markets,
right, sir,
which really go deep in what you call as investor sentiment, broker sentiment, and so on. So, moment you file an inquiry, the damage is already done, because everybody starts getting little cautious, and especially when you are questioning the very issue of a license to a stock exchange, then it's like the cases of the 2G licenses and the coal block licenses. People don't want, or a strategic investor who is wanting to come forward doesn't want to have that uncertainty that 2 years down the line the license may get cancelled and his investment goes down the drain.
But just to give the devil his due, and by the devil I mean the CBI, there is a view even among SEBI circles that I've been talking to in Bombay and otherwise, that Bhave's decision to allow MCX-SX to begin currency derivatives trading was inappropriate, coupled with the fact that SEBI disallowed equity trading barely weeks after allowing currency derivatives trading. So there are some chinks even in out there. I mean, they've certainly caught on to something.
No, I think that the chinks are primarily, as I mentioned, I think there is really no vision of where the financial capital markets, in India, where they should be, what should be the roadmap for developing this huge financial capital markets.
Right.
Which is why when somebody says you give a sanction for opening currency derivatives, but you can't give for something else, you are then creating a handicapped person when other exchanges can do exactly what you are doing, and they can do it within 5 seconds of your starting currency derivatives. They start currency derivatives.
Right.
Otherwise, you should say, okay, MCX-SX started currency derivatives. All other exchanges will do currency derivatives only after 6 months.
Okay.
Because they've got the added advantage, they've been in the field, and here is a new exchange which comes with a new product. You give them a 6 months leeway. So you must have a very clear policy. If you don't have, then you run into all these problems.
From your assessment of the entire case, what do you think lies ahead for MCX-SX and for the entire NSEL case that's actually an FTIL NSEL case that's in addition to it, which is a separate inquiry at some level, but also linked to it at another level?
Now, first of all, I think we have managed, to be able to ring fence ourselves from the NSEL. All the forensic audits done so far, of course, we've got one more audit currently underway, and the CBI investigation as well as the CAG shows that none of the, shall I say, the cash which was in the NSEL, shall I say, kitty and invested in MCX and other exchanges, they were not really played with here. Therefore, to that extent, we are slightly protected from the NSEL fallout. But because the general perception was that all these were promoted by Mr. Jagdish Shah.
Yes.
So brokers who lost in NSEL are also the same brokers who are with us.
That's right.
And therefore, they have actually had reservations of continuing with this. They say, I've lost money there, so why should I put in money here? So the primary target for us in the new management which came was primarily first to improve investor sentiment and broker sentiment, and then to build up. So that was key, and we had meetings with the shareholders.
Right.
Again, I still feel that there is a policy issue which needs perhaps larger debate. That can you have a private stock exchange promoted by somebody who has only 5%? Right. And you also have where financial institutions and they can take up to 15%, insurance companies. But at the same time, most of the finance companies have their trading arms because they do trade in the stock exchanges. And therefore, under SEBI regulation, they are then not permitted to have somebody on the board of directors. So you are having a situation where a 5% promoter and 90% of the financial institutions not having really a place on the board.
So what you're essentially saying is that since there is no interest for the promoter to really, what is the interest for the promoter to be in it?
What's the interest for the promoter?
If he does not have board control and if he has only 5% shareholding.
And what is the interest for the other shareholders even, if they also can't get into the board of directors for this?
Do you think more money needs to be infused in MCX-SX? And how much fund infusion do you think can be expected via the upcoming rights issue? And would the rights issue, you think, be impacted by the CBI probe now?
Well, MCX requires, I think, 1 year more where they will at least, I think, about 2/3 of the current next to 2014-15. There would be a certain element of cash losses as we consolidate. But by end of 2014-15, we expect to be in the green again.
Okay.
Because previous year, before the scam came, we actually made a profit of 12 crores. So it's not something which is, purely hypothetical.
Right.
If we had 12 crores profit, and I think if the NSEL scam hadn't come, you would have had this year a profit of, maybe 50 crores rather than the loss of 150 crores which came about. So you need capital to make sure that you can function as a stock exchange, because if your net worth falls below 100 crores, you have to close down the exchange. So you have to keep yourself above, and that is why you require at least a minimum of 100 crores to keep yourself afloat while you are doing all the other arrangements to stabilize business.
Right.
The clearinghouse itself requires a capital investment primarily for investor protection of about 300 crores.
Okay.
So that is a separate issue, but we have time for that till the middle of next year. So that is something which can be still worked upon. But immediately in the next 8 to 9 months is really you need to make sure your net worth doesn't fall below 100 crores and you have enough to play around with the new products, new schemes, and little bit of marketing which you have to do to get investors on board, brokers on board, etc.
Right.
So if you have that, then I think you are through. Whether the CBI inquiry will have an impact, it's very difficult to say. I think it's I think a meeting of the bankers earlier were I think there was a meeting of the bankers possibly on Tuesday, and I am not really sure what the sentiments expressed by the shareholders.
Right.
But the option is, if the shareholders don't come, then the stock exchange has to close down.
But there is a possibility that it will actually be impacted. Do you think the CBI inquiry will play spoils? It could.
Yeah, it could, because banks have to go to their board of directors
And actually get clearances.
and therefore, with the sort of Damocles of a CBI inquiry at the background, other board of directors of banks would be a little chary of investing their money if they feel that there are better ways in which they can invest the money.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.